everything must be done in order to save this GNU. The alternative to this GNU that is currently there is an ANC, MK, EFF government. And we all know that that would be disastrous for everybody. We made it clear from day one that we do have issues with the BELA Bill in its current format, and that we wanted the president to send the BELA Bill back to the National Assembly in Parliament. The threat to the GNU currently is from the president's side. The president knew how we and other parties feel about this, and he decided to carry on irrespective of our feelings. So it is the ANC that is, in their actions, being a threat to the GNU. We sincerely hope that the president will realize that this announcement of the signing of the bill was done in haste, and it would have been much better for him to respect our views and to refer this to a dispute resolution mechanism to iron this out, rather than to...
Government of National Unity faces its biggest policy hurdle yet. The DA does not want President Cyril Ramaphosa to sign the contentious Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill into law on Friday. The party is concerned that the proposed law will take powers away from schools. The BELA Bill, as it's known for short, was passed in Parliament in May. To unpack this further, we are joined by DA spokesperson Willie Aucamp. Willie, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. So some interesting wording that's being used around the BELA Bill, and I'm wondering just how much of it is about the bill now, and certainly about the relations between the Democratic Alliance and now the ANC and this Government of National Unity. So let's start with that. The DA's view on where the GNU stands as of tomorrow if the president does sign the BELA Bill.
Well, Naledi, firstly, it is very important that everything must be done in order to save this GNU. The alternative to this GNU that is currently there is an ANC, MK, EFF government. And we all know that that would be disastrous for everybody. So we've got to do whatever we can to save this GNU. That is also why the DA was so surprised when we heard that the president is now going to sign this BELA Bill into law, whilst he full well knew that the DA, who is the second largest partner in the GNU, as well as several other parties in the GNU, has got severe problems with the BELA Bill in its current format. There should have been a dispute resolution mechanism within the GNU that must have been followed to iron out problems when they arise, and this was not done. So we will do from the DA side everything in our power to protect the GNU, but we also cannot have a situation where the ANC unilaterally acts within this GNU. The ANC is not a majority party anymore. They've received 40% of the vote, and they need their coalition partners or the partners in the GNU to govern this country. So unilateral actions by the ANC cannot happen. We must be respectful to each other, and we must be collegial to each other, and therefore we must have this dispute resolution mechanism implemented as soon as possible to iron out these issues.
Yeah, what happened during the negotiations, Willie? I mean, that's always going to be the question, right? Is where the BELA Bill was discussed, it's understood that the DA made it clear that the BELA Bill was unacceptable the way it is framed at the moment. So what was the response to that? What other bills were a concern for the Democratic Alliance as you negotiated with the ANC the formation of this GNU?
You are 100% correct. We made it clear from day one that we do have issues with the BELA Bill in its current format, and that we wanted the president to send the BELA Bill back to the National Assembly in Parliament so that the National Assembly can make some changes to that and then vote on it again. So we also know that we've got problems with the NHI and some other issues. It is very important, Lady, that we know that from day one, we knew that we as partners within this GNU will not agree on everything. That's a given. We would have been naive if we thought that everything will be hunky-dory from day one and that we will all of a sudden now live in this utopian world where we agree on everything. We knew that that is not the reality, and therefore it was in the signed agreement of intent that made up this Government of National Unity. It was decided that this dispute resolution mechanism must be there in order to iron this out. And unfortunately, it has not been implemented. So we urge the president to implement this dispute resolution mechanism. The leader of the DA, John Steenhuisen, had 2 meetings yesterday with the president where he discussed this issue and where he also requested the president to implement this dispute resolution mechanism so that within the GNU, the partners there can try to sort out their differences on this bill, but also for any future differences that might arise. The president notified the leader of the DA and other leaders within the GNU that he will think about that. So we sincerely hope that the president will realize that this announcement of the signing of the bill was done in haste, that they will need to consult with their partners within the GNU, and hopefully thereafter then that the bill can be sent back to the National Assembly due to several constitutionality issues that we have got as the DA with this bill.
Okay, but you raised the issue of dispute resolution not having been, I suppose, a mechanism not having been set up for the GNU partners. And again, this goes back to the point, I think, that was made by spokesperson for the presidency, Vincent Magwenya. And I'm going to quote what he said, because he says, the Constitutional Court has made it clear that the president cannot refuse to sign a bill for political reasons. So it sounds to me like dispute resolution is a political reason. He goes on to say, the only ground on which the president can refuse to sign the bill is constitutional reservations. So, how do you respond to the point that he's made where you're talking about, well, we need a dispute resolution mechanism between members of the GNU when this is not necessarily about the BELA Bill and the constitutionality of the bill in and of itself?
Well, Mr. Magwenya and the president know full well that during the deliberations on this bill, when it first served in front of the National Assembly, and after that, the DA and several civic organizations raised a number of issues that is showing that this bill in its current form has got constitutionality issues. So it is not a matter of only political nitwit here and there to get this bill back to the National Assembly. There are serious constitutional issues in this bill. You cannot take away the rights of parents to decide for their children. Parents know the best, what is in the best interest for their children. You can't expect that a national or a provincial government can unilaterally decide what must happen with children. We believe that there are a number of constitutional issues. The Minister of Education, who is a DA minister, Minister Siviwe Parube, has written 2 letters to the president in which she explained what her problems and issues with this bill is in its current format, where she set out what she believed the constitutional issues are there. So to say that this bill, we want it to be sent back due to political reasons and harmony within the GNU is not correct. The main reason that we want it to be sent back is we believe that it will not be in the best interest of children and that there are constitutionality issues with this. But it is also very, very important that not only for this, but for future differences that might and will arise, that we make use of the mechanisms that we agreed to when we signed this letter of understanding with regards to the forming of the GNU. It cannot be business as usual and the ANC goes on and makes unilateral decisions. We are now a government of national unity and the emphasis must be on the unity part thereof. We must, as a united front, make the decisions that's there.
Well, Willie, therein lies the challenge, and you mentioned the basic education minister, Siviwe Kwahube, who was from the Democratic Alliance. And this is, I suppose, what the difficulty of this GNU really then means, is when a GNU partner disagrees with a policy decision that the president has the right to very well sign tomorrow. If the president does go ahead and sign, what does this mean for the basic education minister, who is from the Democratic Alliance, who was then tasked with executing the plan put forward by the president? What does she then do post tomorrow?
We've got to distinguish between the administrative sector in a ministry and the political sector. So let's say the president signs this into law. Then the Director General and all the directors and officials within the Department of Basic Education will have to implement this because it's law and they are working for government in their respective positions. So they must implement this. The minister in a capacity as the minister of that department must also make sure that there is still a communication line with the president to communicate with the president any problems that they've got with regards to the implementation of this bill. So it must be a clear distinction between the administrative system and the political system with regards to leadership there.
But does that mean that if I were to ask the Basic Education Minister to come onto the show and explain to us next week, Monday, after the bill has been signed, for instance, how the execution work will happen, that she'll do so willingly?
Well, if she is the minister, she has to see to it that the department implements law. No minister in any department cannot implement law. Once this is signed, it is law. But that brings you back to the conundrum that we sit here. The president knows that full well that this minister and the Democratic Alliance and several other parties raised issues with regards to constitutionality. And it would have been much better for him to respect our views and to refer this to a dispute resolution mechanism to iron this out, rather than to put ministers in corners where they do not have a choice other than to implement something that they do not believe in. If the president respected Minister Gwarube, he would have sent this back and we would have negotiated with each other how we're going to deal with the unconstitutionality issues in this bill going forward. But if it is law, then we must implement it. There's unfortunately nothing that we can do about it, but that is what we want to prevent. And we believe that the meeting that John Steenhuisen yesterday had with the president will persuade the president to realize that they were hastily deciding to sign this bill and that they will send it for a dispute resolution committee or platform, for the lack of words there. I'm Afrikaans, so it's very important to protect mother tongue education for me as well.
Okay, let's wrap it up, right? Because some interesting points that have been made there. And then there's the issue around, the bill may very well be signed into law. The NHI bill is also a contentious point for the two parties that are part of this GNU. And I suppose I'm looking for the clarity from you right now. Are these bills, and I want the word threat, are these bills a threat to the government of national unity as we close off, Willie?
It's very important to realize that the DA is not threatening to exit the government of national unity. The threat to the GNU currently is from the president's side. The president knew how we and other parties feel about this, and he decided to carry on irrespective of our feelings. So it is the ANC that is in their actions being a threat to the GNU. We must protect this GNU at all costs, and the Democratic Alliance will look at all the options available to us should this be signed into law.
Yep.
We will take this to court. We will take this to the Constitutional Court if needs be. So we will look at what the options are available to us.
Yebo, you've heard it yourself now from the national spokesperson of the Democratic Alliance, Willie Aucamp, on the threats facing the GNU. The GNU is now passing through the fire. And you know the popular saying that goes that until gold passes through the fire, it's not different from a stone. And so the GNU is at a place now where it's really passing through the fire. It's a stress test, and this test is going to be likely heavily tested today as President Cyril Ramaphosa goes on to sign or not sign the BELA Bill. And that's actually causing a lot of rifts. Yesterday, John Steenhuisen, president of the DA party, had a 34-minute speech, assessing the GNU and its, qualities, and actually an appraisal of the GNU and where it is. And actually, he spoke about how, the DA will not be respectful to the feelings of politicians, but it actually wants to stand up for a government that actually embraces, economic growth and all that. And if the government of national unity is not pursuing economic growth and expanding the economy, then the DA would likely leave the GNU. So, but now this BELA Bill, which President Cyril Ramaphosa is about to sign today, Friday, the 13th of September, is likely going to cause a major rift between the DA and the ANC, and might threaten, the DA party to even start considering leaving the GNU. And so that's what Willie Aucamp is actually explaining in this video. But in this video, I thought we'll really go deep into some things to understand what really is this BELA Bill, why is the DA concerned about the BELA Bill, and how does this translate into power relations between the DA and the ANC, especially those two being the majority of the constituents of the GNU as it is today. So what is the BELA Bill? The BELA Bill stands for the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, okay? So it's kind of like a bill in summary that, you know, it actually argues that school governing bodies would now have a leeway to develop their own schools, their own admission, their own language policies, as it were. Previously, school governing bodies, they had this leeway to develop their own school admission, to develop their own language policies and all that. But the BELA Bill, right, actually now requires that they would submit their policies. That's these policies which has actually been given to schools and admission, school authorities previously. The BELA Bill will now require that these schools would submit their policies to provincial departments for approval. So in other words, it appears that there will be much more government control on the curricula, on the decision making at the level of schools and all that. So what really is the BELA Bill? First of all, let's start with what has actually been until now that the president is about to sign the BELA Bill. So until now, I think this is from 1994 all up till present, school governing bodies, all right, they had the leeway, they had the freedom to develop their own schools admissions, to develop their own language policies and, other routines that actually, go on in the educational system in South Africa. But it appears now that the BELA Bill would now require them to submit their proposals and their actions and their policy designs internally to the provincial department for approval prior to carrying out anything. So it appears that the BELA Bill seeks to have much more government control on the internal policies and internal decision making in educational institutions in South Africa. So in summary, the bill actually proposes to amend South Africa's School Act of 1996, which was Act number 84 of 1996, okay? And it also seeks to amend the Employment of Educators Act of 1998, which was called Act number 76, of 1998. And then this is now actually called the SASA and the EEA respectively. So the BELA Bill wants to align those acts with developments that are actually going on now in the educational landscape in South Africa, and also to ensure that the systems of learning in South Africa are put in place in a manner that gives effect to the right to basic education as enshrined in Section 29, the first subsection of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, especially this is according to the Constitution of 1996. Among other things, it says that the bill wants to amend certain definitions. So some definitions are that to provide that attendance of grade R is compulsory. So the BELA Bill seeks to make the attendance of school at the level of grade R compulsory in South Africa. And it also wants to provide for system improvements, right, in terms of admission and learners to public schools. It also wants to provide for financial and public accountability frameworks for governing bodies and provincial departments. Now, it also says that the BELA Bill wants to provide additional regulatory powers of the minister. So it wants to give much more power to the minister and enhance decision-making and oversight powers of heads of departments and members of the executive councils. And also, I think this is going to be, so it also says that the bill also now proposes as well technical and substantive adjustments, and that to clarify certain existing provisions and to also to insert provisions which are not provided for in the existing legislation, and also strengthen enforcement mechanisms for offenses and penalties. All right. So in summary, that's what the bill actually seeks to pursue. If I'm hearing correctly, it actually wants to give much more power to ministers to be able to control what goes on in the schools. Previously, it has been that probably if a school wants to teach its students in Afrikaans, for example, that decision would have actually been done within the school, within the educational system or that facility, as it were. But now the BELA Bill wants the government to really know and understand what is really being taught in the schools, what language policies are being carried out in the schools per se, so that can be controlled at the level of government, okay? And I think the DA doesn't really feel comfortable with that. So next, let's understand from the DA's perspective why the DA has a problem with this BELA bill. Because you see, if you heard from Willie Aucamp in this interview, he actually said that from the beginning at the negotiation of the GNU statement of intent, the DA stated clearly that they had problems with this BELA bill in its current framing, and that yet President Cyril Ramaphosa wants to go ahead to sign it today, Friday 13th of September. So why is the DA against this bill? This is now from the DA issued by Baksuli Nadoda. It's really published on their website. You can actually go and just get a feel for yourself. But it says that the DA has always been very clear that it completely rejects the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, the BELA bill, in its current form. And that while the DA supports educational reform, it will not support the bill that ultimately disempowers schools and communities and fails to address a single one of the systemic challenges that impede quality education in South Africa, which is what? Overcrowding, curriculum failures, poor literacy and numeracy rates, dropouts, unsafe and unsanitary education facilities, poor quality education, and lack of resources. So it's kind of like the ANC and the DA are seeing two different things. While the ANC wants to have an oversight, sort of like a regulation for what goes on within the different public or schools in South Africa in terms of language policy, in terms of admission policies and all that, the DA thinks that that's not necessary at the moment. What's necessary to now solving South Africa's education system is other problems like overcrowding, other problems like poor literacy and numeracy rates, and unsafe and sanitary facilities in schools, and curriculum failures, and even overcrowding in schools. So it appears that both the DA and the ANC, they just see two different things. And so the BELA bill, the DA feels that the BELA bill is not so necessary at the moment. The DA also argues that it finds it very problematic that the extensive public participation processes were nothing more than expensive box-ticking resources, okay? So it says that if it was not for the DA, thousands of emails submissions would have actually remained unanalyzed. And the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Basic Education, which is the ANC's majority, completely disregarded the bulk of submissions that rejected the BELA bill and voiced concerns regarding its implementation. So while this bill was passed, the DA argues that there were lots of letters and emails that came in rejecting the bill, but the ANC didn't put that into account and went ahead to propose, I think, to set it at the parliament. I think it's argued that there was a unanimous majority vote for the BELA bill, and so that's why President Ramaphosa thinks that it's necessary to sign the bill. But now in the advent of the GNU, Willie Aucamp, the DA, think that President Ramaphosa now has to consult again within the constituents of the GNU, because this is now the 7th administration. It's a new dispensation, rather than going ahead to sign the bill as though the ANC is still the majority, okay? But anyway, going further, the DA, one of the reasons why the DA really has a problem with this bill, number one, it argues that this mandatory grade R, making the grade R attendance at school compulsory. The DA supports the intention, all right, of compulsory grade R at school. But then it says that the Department of Basic Education, DBE, does not have the 12 billion rand needed to implement this for all learners, okay? And it also says that the implementation of this clause, compulsory grade R, might cause cuts to others that are struggling. All right, but vital programs such as the National School Nutrition Program, or especially this program now, the National School Nutrition Program or the Learners Transport Program, those would be affected by making the compulsory grade R, part of the bill. So this is how the DA sees it, that if we make grade R attendance at schools compulsory, it will lead to cuts in some other areas, such as the National School Nutrition Program and also the learner transport programs. And that would actually affect a lot of people, in that regard. This is the DA's understanding of this bill. Secondly, the DA has problems with the admission policies. The DA argues that the BELA Bill seeks to disempower school governing bodies from determining their schools' admission policies and centralize this competency to the head of a provincial department. Okay, now it says that the administrative burden of the head of department to approve every admission policy in the province would be immense and impractical and lead to abuse of power. Now, the DA believes that appropriate mechanisms should be put in place for rare cases where a school might discriminate against learners. However, the head of department cannot both be player and referee at the same time, and the DA now appeals, as the appeals and the implementation authority. So it argues that HOD would have too much responsibility to be also the player and the referee, and that this whole imposition of authority on the head of department might be too much, and it might lead to abuse of power. Now, number 3, the DA has problems with the language policies part of the bill. The DA says that it opposes the disempowerment, from determining the disempowerment of SGBs from determining school language policies. Okay, so this is a big problem. So school governing bodies, right, being disempowered from taking from deciding or determining school language policies is a problem that the DA has. The DA wants school governing bodies to still have power and control to determine the language policies of the school. All right. DA says that it is worried that this clause could actually be exploited to target single language or mother tongue education schools to change their language policies. So it also argues that it is also highly impractical for the head of department to approve the language policies of all the schools in the province within the required time frame. All right, so these are the problems the DA has with that. All right. It also argues that in terms of the admission policies, that an appropriate appeals mechanism needs to be established, and that 14 days is not enough to appeal the head of department's decisions on language policies, nor should the head of department be both the appeals and implementation authority. So the DA just has this problem with giving so much power to the head of the department in this regard, and really wants it to still be left decentralized so that the schools can have their some power assigned to them, and the HOD still maintains its own power. All right, so that from their perspective, to avoid abuse of power from the HOD. Now, number 4, the DA has a problem with this centralization of power that this BELA Bill seeks to slowly come now. So the school governing bodies at public schools and school for learners with special needs should be free to determine how their members are elected without the minister's intrusion on the provinces. So this is the DA. So it's still this whole issue of taking power away from the head of the department and allowing more power to still reside within the schools. Okay, and lastly, the DA has a problem that it thinks that this BELA Bill would regulate the homeschooling sector. All right, it says that the department has failed to meaningfully engage with the homeschooling sector regarding the most reasonable and appropriate ways to assess learners, nor has the department satisfactorily addressed parents' concerns regarding registration of learners and inspection of premises. Now, the BELA Bill, the DA argues, not only contains exploitative clauses, but it also fails to address blended and online learning despite the COVID pandemic, showing the importance of these forms of education. All right. Now, it also says that the bill does not provide enough protection for victims of sexual assault that have had to attend disciplinary hearings, which could lead to further traumatization. So the DA argues that the BELA Bill's focus on centralizing power holds too much risk of abuse, and its failure to address the systematic issues that plague basic education in South Africa does not bode well. So this is the perspective of the DA. The DA is against this BELA Bill because it feels that the BELA Bill gives more power, it centralizes power more. Okay, unlike the devolution of power, the decentralization of power that the educational system in South Africa has enjoyed, I think, from 1996 onwards. But now the BELA Bill wants to centralize power and give power to the head of the department, I think, at the provincial level. And so if that power now gets into the hands of probably some irresponsible official or something, it could make abuse of power much more easy. And once that bill is signed, to repeal that bill will be difficult. And so the DA is trying to really fight for a decentralization of power, so to speak, a democratization of power rather than a centralization of power. So that's what this whole BELA bill is. That's what this whole issue is all about. That is threatening the DA's participation in the government of national unity, and argues that this might be one of those reasons that it might leave, or be tempted to leave the government of national unity as it is today. All right. So that's actually where we'll be stopping for this video, because I know there's been a lot of questions and comments asking what really is this BELA bill, why is the DA angry with this bill and all that. The DA now wants to go to court to that if President Ramaphosa signs this bill today, that it has threatened, the DA has threatened now to approach the courts, and all that. So if there's this tension within the party, within the government, it might actually spell not have a really good feel for the future of the government of national unity. Okay, and that Steenhuisen says that the BELA bill compromises the rights of children to the mother tongue education. So this is a big major problem for the DA, especially under the leadership of John Steenhuisen. He's arguing that these rights, the right of children to mother tongue education, would be threatened by this BELA bill. And probably, if one thinks about a city like Orania, for example, I don't know the language of the schools in Orania anyway, but if maybe it's Afrikaans, for example, or something, that this BELA bill now would now have power to decide the language policies on that school, and then have a control on the choices of the schools to effect or enact a kind of language policy that school feels necessary for its pupils. And so the DA wants to go to the courts to challenge those aspects of the bill that believe that it's wrong, and that the DA says that it's committed and it's principled to follow this course of action if the president chooses to follow to sign this bill on the 13th of September today. So this is actually the whole issue around the BELA bill, and I really hope that this helped you guys understand why the DA and the ANC are having a clash because of this BELA bill. And I don't know, what do you guys think? Share your thoughts. Let's all get enlightened on this and hopefully come to a point where we understand. And if President Ramaphosa goes ahead to sign the bill today, we'll start slowly understanding the ramifications of this bill. But what do you guys think about this BELA bill? Share your thoughts in the comments.